It's gorgeous out. Let's pop some ducks.
This is the Upduck Podcast, a blend of upland and waterfowl hunting. Tune in as your hosts, Tyler Beaton, Jeff Ludicky, Matt Jeske, chat about training dogs and share their bird hunting stories, tactics, and strategies.
I know, right? Matt, what's happening, buddy?
Not too much. How's it going?
Just living the dream, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Dusted off the literal dust in my upland vest yesterday.
There you go.
Went out.
Yeah, you beat Jeff to it.
I beat Jeff. Took 6 shells, but 6 shells for one rooster. Not good. Not good.
Oh.
But
that was with the new gun?
That was with the new gun, yeah. 30-mile-an-hour winds. Just, you know what it is, though, right? When, like, you get, like, some bushes, some, like, tall, scrubby stuff, right? And I always pick the wrong side to go on.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You pick the one side, and then the dog kind of moseys on in there, and then all of a sudden you're, you know, and you're like, oh, son of a gun. And of course, he's, like, low flying away there. I had to wait till he was out there a ways before I'm able to actually pop off a few shots and stuff. So, yeah, 6 shells, 1 rooster, but we got it done.
There you go. There
we go. We're Jeffless tonight.
Currently, yes.
Currently. What is he doing?
Putting his kids down. Solo parenting tonight.
He's a solo parent kind of night. So,
yep.
We're going to start without him. If he pops on. He'll make it awkward. That's great. We love awkwardness in this podcast. So, should we bring in our guest?
Yeah.
All right. Tonight we have, or today, whenever you're actually listening to this podcast, we have Taylor Finger. He is the DNR migratory game bird ecologist in the state of Wisconsin. So, Taylor, welcome to the Upduck Podcast.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Did I get your title right?
I'm the game bird ecologist. I was the migratory guy, and once you do some decent work and they don't have to hire someone else, they give you turkey and pheasant and small game. And so I'm the waterfowl guy by nature, but education. Now I'm rapidly trying to learn how to be a turkey and pheasant and rabbit and squirrel biologist as well. So,
wow, that seems like twice as much work.
At least.
Yeah.
Is that one of those promotions that comes with a pay increase, or is that one of those promotions that's like, we love what you're doing, here's some more
great
work.
job.
So good.
Absolutely, yeah. The latter one for sure.
Okay. All right. When did that happen?
Yeah, that would have been in late 2022. So, COVID started, then the biologist took another position. The upland biologist took another position. They were having, multiple people kind of hold the fort, and they're like, well, birds are birds. So, if you can do waterfowl, you should be able to handle, turkey and pheasant. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not out there planting habitat, but now I've got all of these NWTF committees. I got all these Pheasants Forever committees that I have no idea what I'm doing. So, it's been a steep learning curve over the last couple of years.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I'm not even sure where to start now. Let's start. Okay. Let's start with just where are you located in the state of Wisconsin?
Yeah, I live about 15 minutes north of the Dells, but work out of the main office down by Madison.
Okay. Did you always know you wanted to be a game bird ecologist, or how did you get to where you're at now?
Yeah, I wanted to be a waterfowl guy. I grew up, I was the decoy bag carrier for my dad when I was, 9, 10. Before I could shoot, I at least went out and helped with that and helped throw decoys and hang out with the dog, and went out to North Dakota, first time ever hunting, at 11, 12 years old, and doing all that, and thought, well, if I could somehow make this a career. And I went to Point, got my bachelor's, like a lot of other wildlife folks, and then did my master's in Ontario, Canada, and so moved up to Canada for a couple of years and did that, and come back, and now I have a house about 4 minutes away from the house I grew up in and have a dream job, so there's not a whole lot. I can't complain about a whole lot.
There you go. What's your master's in that took you to Ontario?
We put satellite transmitters inside lesser scaup, inside bluebills, and I tracked their spring migration and compared it to weather patterns to see how conditions influence timing of migration.
Very cool.
Wow. What did you find with that research?
Yeah. Interestingly, so again, the spring survey, the national spring survey is timed primarily for mallards, and which means it doesn't do a very good job for diving ducks, and that's exactly what we found in that. Some diving, like for bluebills, is that when they tend to hold tight, they don't migrate along with the ice. They'll sit, and then within 48 hours, they might migrate 1,000 kilometers, 2,000 kilometers. And so the way the survey is structured, you have to time it perfectly to capture them, or else you're going to completely miss them, or you're going to double or triple count them. And that tends to have been the case with SCOP over the last 20, 30 years, as you see these really high highs and really low lows. And interestingly, some of the stuff that I found with where they were actually migrating to, they're migrating a lot more now east of Hudson Bay because they're using the Great Lakes a lot more than they historically did because of zebra and quagga mussels. That was one of those things everyone said was a bad thing, but it's an unlimited food resource for diving ducks. And so they use the Great Lakes a whole lot more now. And rather than migrating west into boreal Canada, they're migrating east of Hudson Bay. And we don't do a whole lot of surveys over there. So there could be a huge subset of bluebills that we're just not counting. So.
Interesting. Yeah. Fascinating. Yeah. I have so many more questions on this. We're totally off topic already. I don't, Matt, you want to ask a follow up or you want me to go ahead here?
No. How many birds did you GPS for that study?
Did 150. So we did some on pool 19 on the Mississippi River, and then about half on pool 19 on the river, and then half on Lake Erie and Lake Ontario.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So talk about give the backdrop for the spring survey, because not everybody's going to know all the details of that, and why is it time for mallards, and because some of the details behind that for someone who's a 101 level needs it like me.
Yeah, so the Spring Waterfowl Survey is the largest wildlife survey in the world in terms of its scope and its scale. So it's a pretty significant deal in all of Canada, Alaska, and then the northern tier of states. They all contribute. So Canadian Wildlife Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the states. We conduct a survey in typically late April, early to mid-May, to essentially count breeding pairs along transects that are pre-identified. They're always flown the same length. You fly at about 200 feet up in the air at about 100 miles an hour, and you're counting birds. And what happens then is you are able to then extrapolate that count into a larger area depending on habitat. And so primarily we count everything. We count absolutely everything, but it's focused on mallards because mallards are one of those good indicator species that generally, if they're doing well, they're the highest harvested duck that we have. And if their populations are doing well or they're doing poorly, it's a real good indicator of what a lot of our other dabbling duck and, upland nesting waterfowl are doing. And so we time it primarily for that because it's going to give us the best bang for our buck.
It's good. Perfect. Excellent. Wow. Okay. All right, Matt, more questions about the survey, or I'm going to try to bring us back to where we got off.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So you went up to Canada, did your master's, you did that, and then you came back and you got hired by the Wisconsin DNR.
Yep. Yeah, I was the assistant migratory guy. So I was just a LTE working, trying to find a permanent job with the DNR. So I did that for several years.
Okay. And so as you got started and you were the migratory game ecologist, right before just the game bird ecologist, what does a day-to-day look like? What are you looking at? What are you analyzing? Just talk about some of that stuff.
Yeah. So again, primarily focus on three main parts, and regulatory stuff. So I'll touch base on that. But I fly the survey, so I schedule all of that. I coordinate all the flights, get up there and actually do the flying. I coordinate the banding effort. So again, Wisconsin bands about 10,000 birds a year. So that's a huge effort from June until August. So make sure that we have that all done. And then the regulatory side is, I work with the public. Most of the time I hold a lot of public hearings, a lot of public meetings. I meet with Wisconsin Conservation Congress, the Wildlife Federation, Green Bay Duck Hunters, WWA, all of those groups. And basically Wisconsin ranks in the top 5 in terms of number of waterfowl hunters in the country. And so we have a long history here in Wisconsin of using public input for setting regulations and seasons. And so, I do that. I go on it had historically been an annual thing that every year I'd go out and we'd sit down and meet with the groups and say, all right, when do you guys want the season to start? When do you guys want the splits to be? How do you want the zones to be structured? All those types of things. And so, when waterfowl numbers are good, in terms of their populations, setting the seasons is really based on public input. If there's no biological concerns about when the season starts or what the bag limits are or what the zone should be, then it's based on majority rules. And so I do my best to get out to as many people as possible. I sit on the phone a lot. I answer a lot of emails. I take a lot of questions and try to structure a season that, not everyone's going to be happy, but at least we know that the majority of folks that this is something that they can live with.
Okay. So essentially all the folks I see complaining online, instead of complaining online, they should be going to these events and having their voices heard.
Absolutely. Yeah. I make that very clear in all my things. We do an online public input. I always answer on the phone. I'm always answering. If complaining on Facebook is not very productive. And suggesting ideas on social media, and then all of a sudden it gets 300 likes, and you're like, that's not even legal. And so there's a lot of that you rack your brain around. But reach out, and that's the biggest thing is everyone thinks like them. And so when their structure doesn't get selected or isn't the one that's necessarily supported, well, it's not because we're ignoring you. It's because you were the minority, even if you think everyone should think like you do.
Sure.
It's hard though. People have egos. That hurts the ego.
Yeah, it's like I said, our role is to inform and educate and make sure that people understand why we do what we do. It's, again, I'm a waterfowl hunter, but I'm not structuring the seasons for what Taylor wants at all. It is not the way we do things. And so we make sure that we usually get 2,000 to 3,000 individual comments when we do set the regulations. And then we get feedback from the Conservation Congress, has representatives in every county, or Wisconsin Waterfowl Association, who's got 8,000 to 10,000 members, or Wildlife Federation. So we're talking, tens of thousands of waterfowl hunters are being represented in this. And generally that's why our seasons are the way they are, because we do have so much feedback.
Yeah, I think that's great. Another reason why, if you're in Wisconsin and you're a waterfowl hunter, you should join the WWA, right? Because then your voice can be heard through that. But as the public hearings that you're talking, where people can get involved, when are those announced? Like, how?
Yep.
I'm thinking about, like, with this podcast, like, we should, if they're, depending on what's out there for, like 2026, we should try to link as much as possible and just get as much information out there for people.
Yeah. So again, historically, we used to do this on an annual basis, and I would go around and spend 300, 400 hours a year doing all of this public input stuff. And what we found out, we did an analysis right after COVID, and we found that since 1997, since we've had a 60-day season, over 92% of the time, the hunting regulations didn't change on an annual basis. So that's a lot of work to argue with the same people about the same topics to come out the same exact way 90+% of the time. And so we did a trial run for 2023 through 2025 where we set the seasons for 3 years. We said, hey, we're going to have a public input session if you guys want. We're going to set the seasons. We can adjust the bag limits based on what the feds say, like pintails went up to 3. All right, we don't have to have a public meeting to say where we're going to go from 1 to 3. That's what the feds are going to allow us to do. But, the South Zone's going to open up on the Saturday nearest October 1st, and 23 and 24 and 25. And we said we're going to do an analysis after that was done. We looked at it. I can count the number of people that didn't like that idea on one hand over the last 3 years. And so we said, okay, well, we just set the zones for 5 years. It's a federal timeline for a 5-year zone timeline. Well, starting in 2026, we'll do a 5-year timeline for setting our season structures. So I'm collecting input right now. I've got the questions formulated here. I'm starting to work with our partners. So we're going to do a time period from 2026 through 2030. And I'm going to do all like this December, this January, this February, start ramping up the public comment period, but likely in late February, early March, we'll be doing those public hearings where we actually go around, and I typically do like La Crosse, I do Rice Lake, I do Appleton, I do Pewaukee, that type of stuff, and try to get out in front of as many people as possible, and then do the whole public input tool, which is like a survey online that people can provide their comments and input and all of that. And so basically give as much opportunity for people to let us know what they want the seasons to be, and then we'll take it to the Natural Resources Board for approval probably in April of 26.
Interesting. It feels like a really long timeline. 5 years though for the season is structure to stay the same, for bag limits, that sort of thing.
Yeah, the bag limits can ultimately adjust, but
they can. Okay.
Yeah, the bag limits can adjust based on what the feds say. But let's put into perspective, the South Zone hasn't had a different opening date since 1997. The North Zone has opened up different twice since 1997. So again, I know it feels like 5 years is a long time for setting that, but in all reality, the South Zone, we could have set the same exact season structure for the last almost 30.
Would you say it has been for the South? It's been the Saturday closest
nearest
to
October 1st since 97.
Oh yeah, I suppose that does make sense. Okay, here's a question.
Yep.
Why does the North Zone not have a split, but the South Zone has a split?
Yep.
It runs continuous in the North Zone.
Yep, because historically, maybe not over the last 2 or 3 years, but historically, the North Zone didn't get full 60 days of hunting. They were froze before, in the vast majority of the North were froze out before. So essentially, you'd be taking away days in October and putting them in end of November or December, when the chances are the ducks are going to be gone or you're going to be froze out. So again, historically, the North has started as early as possible and then run a straight 60 days, whereas the South, it's been a combination of people that want to start early and hunt, the local birds, and then the people that want to hunt, the greenheads, at the end of the year. So we usually have done a 5-day split historically, because that always gets you into December, whether that's December 1st or that's December 6th. People feel much better about seeing December on the calendar for hunting, even if it's just one day. So
I was gonna say, is there a reason? So it'll close on that Sunday after Southern Zone. It always closes on that Sunday following 2 Sundays or whatever you want to call it, like the 12th it was this year, I think, and it opens that following Saturday. So I hunt both Iowa and Wisconsin, where Iowa will go from a Saturday to a Friday and then won't open till the following Saturday. So you get 9 days, I think, of a break in between, and that pushes it a little further into December as well. How does that decision get made on the split time?
Yep. Yeah. And so again, we primarily focused on 5 days because, again, when you get up to 7 or you get up to 9, generally you are sacrificing a Saturday or Sunday in October for a Tuesday and Wednesday in December.
Sure.
And, when we're talking about opportunity, the amount of people that would hunt on a weekend in October is far more than it would be for the amount of people that would hunt a middle of the week in December. And that's generally just been the discussion that we've had around the split timing during that. I mean, the Mississippi River here about 10 years ago, they had a 12-day split, 11 or 12-day split on the river. And so that was, again, they started early. And then they had a really long break, so then they could end late because the river stayed open late. And so, but you're closing for almost 2 weeks in October on the Mississippi River. And again, after a while, people were like, no way.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes sense.
Yep.
Oh, that's good.
I mean, it's so logical, right? You're trying to maximize. I mean, I see all the comments or the complaints, right? Everybody has an opinion right there, and there's everybody that
everybody has an opinion that is best for their individual situation.
And we haven't had a real winter in about 4 years.
Yeah.
And so there's that growing subset of hunters that are like, we need to be hunting into, the middle of December. We need to get
third week of December.
Yeah, we need to get to Christmas. And again, I recognize, but there's only 60 days of hunting. And so again, you have to give something up to get to that point. And the people that are hunting in the second and third week of December, they can have a really awesome hunt, but they are a 0.5% of the amount of people that would hunt in October.
Right.
Let's do a second split in Wisconsin. Here's public input, right?
Yeah.
First week in November, then I can just go deer hunt and not feel guilty that I'm being pulled in two different directions, right? And then
Yeah, no, we've heard the deer hunt split but the hardcore duck hunters are sitting there. They're like, no, that's when all the guys.
The best time to go out.
That's mad.
Yeah.
The river gets really free coming up here pretty soon on the weekends. I love this time of year coming up.
So that tends to be the argument that we hear. That seems a whole lot louder. That you're like, oh well, that would make sense, and then they're like, no, don't do that.
Yeah. Yep. That's for sure.
That's good. So Wisconsin has a lot of duck hunters, you said, right? Fifth most in the country.
Third last year, third and 24. We were behind Arkansas and Texas.
Wow.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah. And when you think about it, we're at the top of the Flyway. So we got a lot of people fighting over a relatively few amount of birds compared to Arkansas or Texas, where they're at the bottom where all the birds are going to. So it's just it makes it that much more. There's the pressure when we hear about it's absolutely a thing when you talk about opening day or the second opener or whatever that is. It's a real thing.
It's not even worth hunting. I mean, on public land sometimes it's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm starting to fall into Matt's camp where it's like it's just not even worth it. Unless I'm going out to like a random wood duck hole, like I'm not like the marsh. No, it's just terrible.
I went out this year and took my wife with me and the dog, and the alarm went off at 3, and I was out in the spot by about 3:45, and I beat whoever was going to be there, and I'm like, I don't even care if I shoot a duck. Like I was so happy that I got to a spot. I got to a spot and I didn't have to fight anybody. Nobody yelled at me, and I'm like, wow, perfect. This is, and it's that, which is crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'll go back and Wisconsin had the third most duck hunters in 2024 in the entire country. Right. And so there's a ton of public opinion that goes into the season structure and such. Is that public opinion, though? Is that also factor into bag limits of different species, or was that only made on the scientific input of bird count?
Yep, that's through the Flyway. So that's made by the Fish and Wildlife Service. They conduct the survey. We assist them with the survey. And then all of those reports from the feds, the harvest report that we get, the breeding survey report, all of those memos that come from the Fish and Wildlife Service, we get those as state agency officials in the Mississippi Flyway. So it's 14 states and 3 Canadian provinces. And we get those. We then meet about 2 weeks after we get the data. We all meet in person and sit down and we go through all of it. And we're looking at it. We're like, okay, well, yep, this says pintails are going to be 3. This says scaup are going to be 2 for 45 days and 1 for 15. And we look at the models, we go through everything, and we make our recommendations on what that information is. As a Flyway, we make those recommendations to the Fish and Wildlife Service, who then review those and ultimately will make a final decision. But yeah, they're doing the same thing in the Atlantic Flyway, they're doing it in the Central Flyway and the Pacific Flyway. And so that information is scientifically derived and then reviewed by a technical section that then ultimately says, hey, yeah, we feel comfortable with where we're going to go with this, or here's new research that we need to be asking to try to answer this question, or, what do we need to look at to get what we need? And then, we make those recommendations to the feds, who then ultimately make a final decision.
Okay. All right. I got to wrap my head around that process, because you explained that in like 60 seconds, but there was so much there, right? You laid out the entire Flyway process in 60 seconds. So, right, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, right, they're conducting the surveys, right? They're the ones you're assisting them, but they're conducting the surveys.
Yep.
And then it comes to you.
Correct. Yeah, because we're the representatives at the state level that are going to have to implement, what is, being potentially proposed. And so ultimately we're the ones hearing from our constituent bases. We're the ones hearing from, the conservation organizations, Ducks Unlimited, the Deltas. We're hearing directly from those to say, hey, how come we're not looking at this? How come we're not focusing on this? Or what's the main things we need to be looking at? So again, it's important as a flyway, that, Wisconsin doesn't have a different bag limit than Louisiana, because ultimately, it's a shared resource. And so we get together, all the states and Canadian provinces get together, and we sit down and ensure that we're managing this for everybody and doing it in a fair and somewhat equitable manner to ensure that we don't lose hunters. Because quite frankly, that's the ultimate goal, is we want to maintain or grow as many hunters as possible, because they're funding all of the habitat work. The money from the duck stamps, the money from all of that is going directly into how many birds we're going to produce. And so that's the vast majority of our jobs, is in terms of regulations, is how can we structure a season that we retain as many hunters as possible without negatively affecting the resource. And so that's the ultimate goal of the Flyway.
So that's the Flyway one. How does the federal standard kind of trickle down? So obviously that, you just answered the question of why we have 4 mallards, Midwest or in the Mississippi Flyway. East Coast might have 1 or 2 or whatever they've kind of worked back to now. How does that work from a federal side? For 2 years we heard about pintails are going to 3. Federal said it's fine. How does that federal landscape overlook each of the flyways on a per bird limit basis?
Yeah, so we have harvest strategies for specific species, whether it's, we have a wood duck one, we have canvasbacks, we have pintail, we have scaup. Those strategies have been approved essentially through all 4 flyways before the feds implement them. So again, ultimately, it's a process that we work together hand in hand to say, hey, we're the technical experts to help you with this. This is good to go now, let's implement it. And so when they collect, they're collecting the harvest data from all of our banding information, they're collecting the spring, breeding data, they put it into a model and it spits something out and it says, okay, yeah, this is going to be the population's X. Okay, we can have a pintail bag limit of 3. And so then that gets kicked down to us to be like, hey, this is what our model said. Is this jiving with what you all are hearing and seeing on the landscape? Because again, ultimately models are models, most are wrong, but some are useful. And so that's how we're kind of the check and balance on a lot of that information. And so we help them develop, the harvest strategies, and then they basically give us the sideboards and frameworks to work within to structure what we need to at a state specific level.
Okay.
Interesting. Very interesting. The harvest strategy, what would that look like for, say, wood ducks? How do you develop that? And what does it look like? Yeah,
it's a lot of math. It's one of those ones where let's do scaup, just because wood ducks is a little bit more in depth because they have 2 breeding locations, one in the northern part of this country, and then they also have breeding in Mississippi, Louisiana, and Alabama. And so trying to configure out those multiple breeding locations as well as differentiating harvest and all that, so there's a lot going into that. But for scaup, we get banding data. We have a bunch of a lot of people think that we band because we want to know where birds are coming and where they're going. We got backpack transmitters and GPS trackers that we can do that with. We band because we want to know harvest rates. We want to know, what's the rate we're shooting hens compared to drakes? What's the rate we're shooting adults compared to juveniles? Are we, shooting them at, did our harvest rate go up by 5 or 6 percentage points in the last 10 years, and why? What's going on? So we get that information from banding, and then we match that up with the breeding counts that we have, and we can ultimately say there's this certain threshold that when the population's at this and sustaining, a harvest rate of X, well, you can shoot 3 a year, or when we can only shoot 2 for 45 days or 1 for 15, or all the way down to 1. And so that's what we do within the Flyways. We sit and we work through those harvest strategies to develop something that, again, ultimately we provide the maximum amount of opportunity without negatively affecting the population.
It's great. It's super fascinating. It's really interesting. I asked about wood ducks because Jeff wanted to know why, as we were spitballing back and forth. His big question was, why can we only shoot 3 wood ducks in Wisconsin when there's more wood ducks in Wisconsin than are teal this year?
Yeah. And again, it's important that we manage regulations on a multi-year basis. And so again, prior to 2008, we could only shoot 2 wood ducks. And again, we looked at our harvest and how that's changed. We went from prior to 2008, I think our harvest on wood ducks was about across, they made up 16% of our total harvest. After now, I think that number is almost 26 or 27%. Yeah. And so just adding, 1 extra bird to the bag, and, our wood duck populations are relatively stable over the last 10 years. People went from, if I'm out hunting and I can shoot 2 wood ducks, that's great, to at 3, I'm a wood duck hunter. I'm specifically going out, if it's half the bag, I'm going to target wood ducks. And we absolutely saw that shake out in terms of overall harvest percentage. And so we just want to make sure, we're looking at our wood duck population and it's stable. It's not still growing. If it was still growing at an X amount of rate, well, there'd be an argument there that we could then, bump that up potentially to 4 or what that should be. But, if we're not seeing that, well, we're going to lean on, we know that we're hitting them at 10 percentage points higher than we did 15, 20 years ago. Populations maintaining but not growing, well, we might be there. We might be at that threshold that we don't want to hurt what we have.
No, it makes sense. Makes perfect sense. Yeah. And I think the question is relevant this year because I think from just being out, the wood ducks must have had a very successful breeding season, right?
Yeah,
because they're everywhere. I mean, they have been everywhere this year. They're being observed. We're doing the migration report. They're all over the state. Where it's seeing tons of wood ducks.
And I'll comment on the teal part. I mean, we had a frost the first week of September, and I mean, we put a ban on a blue-winged teal in Horicon here several years ago that was shot in Argentina in the first week of September. And so, just to put into perspective where those birds can go when they need to be, and if we have any type of cold weather, I was getting in the 3rd week of September, I had heard that there were more blue-winged teal on the Texas coast than they've ever seen. And so that northern, and we had a cold stretch there. It got warm again after that, but it doesn't take much.
Yeah, that was a bummer. But that said, like you said, teal moving. I mean, I shot my first band this year, and it was a teal. It was banded, so I shot it on the 6th of September. It was banded the last week of August up in Manitoba at the Delta Waterfowl Marsh. It was 12 days before. Yep.
And
pretty crazy.
Another 12 days, it could have been in Arkansas, Louisiana. Yep.
Yeah.
The thing that I've noticed this year, at least hunting in southeastern Wisconsin, is there haven't been teal around, not during teal season, not at all. And we had that. It was cold. It felt like fall. I mean, it was lows in the upper 30s or around 40, and where I'm at, and then highs maybe at 60. And I think
I was talking to some.
Yeah, go ahead. I'd say 2024 opening day was 85 degrees.
Yeah,
a teal season.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I'm already talking to some people. I went out with another buddy, and he shot 2 stud Drake green-winged teal. I'm like, it is not even the first week of November, and they are all plumed out, looking like late November birds. And I'm like, it's happening.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah. What is going back to that? I'm curious now. What? From a duck population, percentage of makeup of species percentages across the state of Wisconsin, what is the wood duck percentage? What percentage of ducks?
It's like I said, I think it's 26 or 27. mallard is right around that 29 or 30. Our 75% of our ducks are made up of mallards, wood ducks, blue-wing, and green-wing teal. They make up 75% of our harvest.
Okay.
And again, we've seen, it kind of move around on the edges. We've seen our diving and sea duck numbers start bumping up here of the last 10 years or so, just because as open water hunting has become more and more popular, interest in scaup and golden eyes and bufflehead and things along those lines have increased considerably.
Sure.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm just it's fascinating. The whole thing is fascinating. I don't even know what question to ask next, because there's so many I want to go back to and just start reaching for random stuff here. This is a random one. So you're coordinating the surveys, right? The flights.
Yep.
Have you started to utilize drone technology at all with that?
So not for the flights, just because the battery life on a drone is so short.
Okay.
Again, so generally for a spring survey a day, I'm usually flying 10 to 11 30-mile transects. And it's usually taking us 8 to 9 hours to do that. And so one of the drones that's big enough to carry a camera that can legitimately track along those transects, you might get through a transect. You might not, though. And then at that point, you'd have to land and then have to replace the batteries. And I think each one of them batteries are like $2,000. And so again, that's been we haven't used them for that, but for checking birds in the marsh, for doing ground, brood counts and things along those lines. Absolutely. They're invaluable. And so also, historically, we would fly a survey, we'd fly a transect, and then within 24 hours, we'd send out a ground crew to go over the same exact area, because quite frankly, you're flying at 100 miles an hour. The chances are you probably missed a bird. So what we do is we'll send a ground crew out there and we'll compare what I counted versus what they counted. And we can develop essentially this visibility correction factor to make sure that we're essentially accounting for those unseen birds. Well, our next step that I would like to take is, rather than, having to send out, 2 or 3 people to beat the bush on every wetland in a 30-mile, within a half a mile of where the road is for 30 miles, that's where you use a drone. Get that up and fly it over, and you only have to go out so far, a quarter mile on either side of the road, and you can be like, yep, okay. And then you jump back up, and then you move up to the next wetland and throw it out and do it that way. Because we know that the ability for drones to accurately count birds is so much higher than it is for just a person using binoculars or trying to beat the brush and hope to God that you flushed birds and you knew exactly what it was and where they all went. So.
That's good. That's interesting. I mean, right. And if you can get better data, right, better data is going to help inform, right, your decisions then too.
Right. Yeah. Your confidence in what you have is so much higher.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. That's so good. Man. Okay. There's so much here, right? So Wisconsin, right, that you're banning 10,000 birds a year in the state of Wisconsin, I think you said.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, we banned about 4,100 Canada geese, 4,000 mallards, 1,700 wood ducks, and about 850 doves.
Okay. So right, and then folks from the public, can we assist with the banding process?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, it's one of the best opportunities to get volunteers out to, get your hands on birds. It's absolutely the highlight of the fall, or of the summer going into the fall. And so, yeah, we have, I want to say, close to 20 different banding stations all across the state. So if folks are interested in banding, just reach out to me and I'll be like, okay, where are you at? How far are you willing to travel? And here is the biologist that'll put you on their email list to say, hey, we're going to be banding at Collins Marsh, on this date and this date and this date. If you guys want to come along, sign up. And so, yeah, it's usually early mornings. You got to get up early and you wait for them to fire the cannon and get the birds under the net. And we, as the biologists, we do all of the banding and the sexing and doing all that. But you, as the volunteers, help us get them out from underneath the net. You guys give us the birds. You take the birds. You let them go. You get all the awesome photos and get to handle and get to see everything. And so, yeah, without volunteers, it's too much work for us in terms of the staff that can get it done.
Do you typically have enough volunteers, or do you need people? What's the?
Yeah, typically, yeah, we have a lot of people signed up, people that have known about it for years and years and years still stay on the list. But so there's always room for new folks. But generally, depending on which of the operations, if you're going to get out maybe once or twice, because then they want to get new people. Want to make sure that we allow the experience for that. You don't have the same person filling up a spot every single, Tuesday or Thursday of the summer. And so, yeah, tends to be far more than what we can get out. But when it comes to the alarm going off at 2:30 or 3 o'clock for some of these people, if they got to drive an hour and a half or something, they're like, yeah, maybe I won't show up. And so usually the group that says they're coming is far larger than the group that actually shows up. So
Right.
That's fair. No, I mean, it's really interesting. I think, as I'm listening to you talk, Taylor, right? It's right. As waterfowlers, we have such an opportunity to have an impact, like such an impact on our actual hunt and how involved we are, from public input, right? Hearing, like, I can voice what I think the season should be, and I can, right? That's right. You're going to hear that. I can go out, I can help with the banding program, right? Which again provides data then that assists you, right? And your colleagues with making decisions about, future harvest limits and such, or, making recommendations to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. There's so much that we can get involved in, and you feel like your voice is heard, and that you're actually like, you're making an individual impact versus just being one of, where you don't really have that much sway in things.
Yeah, and that's just on the state end. I mean, like you mentioned before, get involved with Wisconsin Waterfowl Association, get involved with Ducks Unlimited, get involved with Delta or whoever, and then you can, when they have work days and you want to do some habitat stuff, you want to help, work on your local marsh or something like that. There's plenty of opportunities to get out there and, like you said, help the resource and be part of the process, because there's a lot of states within the Flyway here that, I mean, I know the biologist that just sits down and says, all right, this is what the season's going to be this year. He didn't ask, he's like, well, this is what it's going to be. And we have a history here in Wisconsin of public input for absolutely everything. And so it is unique in that we are coming to you asking what it should be, but ultimately remember that it's what is best for the majority of the 65,000 waterfowl hunters. And honestly, we get this all the time. It's like, well, they're not real duck hunters. Those guys that only go out, 2, 3, 4 times a year. You're like, well, why are you listening to those guys instead of us that, go out 40 days of the year, 50 days of the year? And quite frankly, everyone buys a duck stamp. And if they're buying a duck stamp, they all have skin in the game. And it's tough to say, well, that new kid that is really gung-ho about it and wants to be in it has a voice that's less loud than the guy who's been hunting for 55 years, but now only goes out 3 times a year. Well, how do you value one over the other? And so that typically tends to be the argument that we hear a lot is, well, I'm the one you should be talking to. And you're like, well, everyone, that's basically a vote's a vote in terms of how this stuff shakes out.
Makes sense. So I got a hypothetical question for you, Taylor.
Yep.
All right. If you had the power, like other folks in other states, right, and your opinion was the only one that mattered, what would you do from a season standpoint?
I think what we have right now, we are spoiled because we have 60 days to hunt. We complain on both ends. It's like, well, are we too early, or we're not late enough, or what's going on there? I mean, it would be real interesting if we had a 30-day duck season, because we would figure out when to hunt ducks in the state of Wisconsin. We'd have to narrow down what actually works. I think for a 60-day season, I know a lot of hunters are like, well, the ducks didn't come down until the season closed. If I have one phone call, I have 24 phone calls 2 days after the season closed, said the ducks finally got here. And again, I would encourage every single one of those folks to take a look at what Illinois Natural History Survey, who flies surveys on the river, does, or the Missouri, the Department of Natural Resources in Missouri, or Mississippi. They all do fall surveys. And I can tell you that if the ducks didn't reach Wisconsin by December 1st, those states would have no idea what to do. Again, you can look at those surveys and you can see that, Missouri typically peak numbers in Missouri is the third week of November, the week of Thanksgiving. And so if that's when they're peaking, there's not that many birds north of us. We tend to see a lot of mallards, and I think that's where people get hung up on, is that, you got to figure what migrates through the state of Wisconsin on the week of Halloween. We're talking millions of birds that are not mallards.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of canvasbacks, we're talking scaup, we're talking, pintails, redheads, all these other birds. But people in December are like, well, the greenheads, that's what they're focusing on. And now they see 1,000 greenheads off the interstate on the body of water that now hasn't been hunted for a week, and the birds absolutely know that. And so it's not a migration. I think it's a concentration. And so that's where we have to, work on educating folks, is that it's pushing that season later in December is not going to result in more ducks ultimately being killed in the state of Wisconsin. And so I do think that making sure that we have the season open through October and the first 3 weeks of November is timed out pretty well for just about everybody.
Okay. That you made the point I was going to make, or I was going to ask, which was how much of what people are seeing in early December is a concentration thing, because right, even you can have some of these really small ponds that freeze up, and then you're concentrating more birds on specific bodies of water that are actually open.
Yep, and they tend to be highly visible from the road. And again, the ducks haven't been shot at now for a little while, and they're just showing up in times of the day that they typically wouldn't have shown up at times of the day, and people are seeing them and they're like, wow, look, the birds finally came down. And again, there's hard, good data to show that those birds have, we know based on, again, I fly Green Bay in the fall generally, and then we have historic surveys of flying the Mississippi River. And for dabblers, or for divers, it's usually the last week of October, and for dabblers it's the first week and a half in November. And again, we know that that's generally, again, I know we've had warm winters the last handful of years, but ultimately, even in December, it gets pretty stale. If anybody's been out there duck hunting, we get a cold snap generally around, the second week of November, then we'll warm back up, and there ain't a whole lot happening. And it doesn't happen much until the end of the year when things start freezing, that first week of December. And all of a sudden, they get one last big push of whatever birds are up north of us, and whatever birds that we have are getting concentrated. And so I can ultimately say that the hunting seasons in most of the states south of us are open, well open, prior to the state of Wisconsin being closed. And they wouldn't do so if the ducks weren't there.
It's great. It's good to know. I had a follow-up question. I totally forgot what it was. So that what you just told me though is that I need to figure out when I'm going to deer hunt so that I can hunt the first 2 weeks in November. That's basically what I heard, and I think I forgot whatever question I was going to actually ask after that.
Yeah, we know that's when, your majority of birds are going to be pushing through the state is during that time period. And so, I know everyone likes to hunt the rut, but if you're willing to get out there and again, I can't emphasize this enough, is scouting. If we have a survey that was done that people who scout 3 or more times a year shoot 3 times as many birds as people who don't scout at all. And so again, just to put into perspective of, if you put in a little bit of work, generally you're going to be successful. And however, just like deer hunting, just like a lot of our other hunting, if you tend to go back to the same exact spot every single time, you're going to typically get the same exact results every single time. And that generally isn't ideal. So, yeah.
Perfect. All right. What is your opinion on splash limits?
Yeah. So there's currently a licensing system that's called a 2-tiered licensing system that's being tried out in South Dakota and Nebraska. And so they've done a 3-year trial period. We're waiting on the final report. We were supposed to have it by the 1st of September, but we haven't got it yet. I think there's some government shutdown situation going on there. That's why we don't have the report yet. But it was a licensing system for them. It's a 74-day, like tier 1 is 74-day, and you have to follow all the regular duck bag limits. Is it 7 ducks, and follow each species specific bag limit. Whereas the tier 2 is still the 74-day, but it's a 3-bird splash limit. And so their attempt was that this would be a good way to recruit new hunters, because the argument that the differing bag limits and the ability to identify waterfowl is one of the hurdles to getting people or to retaining older hunters who may not be able to see as well, that type of stuff. And so it's an attempt. We're waiting on the final report. It does seem in some cases that it does, it definitely reactivates some hunters, some older hunters that left because they felt that their eyesight was so poor that they didn't feel great about hunting. There does seem to be some from new hunters or novice hunters, but it's not super high. And so the Fish and Wildlife Service wants some high harvest states to participate, because quite frankly, South Dakota and Nebraska are not necessarily high harvest states when it comes to that. They got a lot of ducks, but they don't have a lot of people participating. And there's just some hesitancy from, I think, some of the states that have specific species that spend a lot of time there. So like for Wisconsin, if I were somebody that wanted to target canvasbacks and only target canvasbacks, well, I'm going to pick that one because that allows me to do so. Or quite frankly, if I was a guy on the bay and I want to shoot 3 bluebills because my entire setup is to shoot 3 bluebills instead of that 15-day stretch where it's only 1, all right, why wouldn't you do so? And we just don't have enough data yet to suggest that that's sustainable or how many people would actually do so. And so until we have that, I'm just a little hesitant to be like, yeah, I'm going to sign up for that, because, I mean, there's a reason why we have these harvest strategies. There's a reason why we do this. Until we know people aren't going to necessarily abuse it, this wants to be a tool to retain hunters or, recruit hunters. We don't want it to be a new method for people to target specifically trophy species. And so that's kind of where I'm at with it right now. We know, in terms of splash limits generally across the board, there's really good science and data that show that at our current harvest that we have, the species specific harvest, for the vast majority of the waterfowl species out there, hunting has little to no impact whatsoever on their population. And so that was the goal. That was ultimately the goal of adaptive harvest management. It'd be like, okay, yeah, we can do this, but if you do a splash limit, all of a sudden are we going to shoot 6 hen cans? Like that's where you start getting worried, or is it, people going to stack up pintails, or people are going to 6 hen mallards? Things like that. And so none of our models, none of our research has looked into harvest at that rate. And quite frankly, if we did, I don't think we'd like what we would see. And so that's generally why we haven't gone down that route. I mean, we have almost 30 years of this adaptive harvest management that allows us to kind of tweak what we think can tweak, where we can add opportunity. But, ultimately the populations are really driven by what's going on in terms of habitat, what's going on in terms of water on, the US and Canadian prairies. And we just keep losing more and more grassland. And when things get dry, we don't have birds. And we've been dry the last 3 or 4 years. And so if anything, the direction that we're heading is not necessarily to be expanding on our ability to essentially negatively impact the resource. We're heading the other direction.
So is there anything that you're thinking about, right? Because if your job is to keep hunters involved, right, and to recruit new hunters, is there anything that we should be aware of that you're thinking about from a regulation standpoint, or something that we should be thinking about from a, to keep hunters in the game or to recruit new hunters?
No, and not necessarily. Just making sure that what we've found in terms of recruiting hunters is it takes a whole lot more effort rather than that youth hunt. Quite frankly, the youth hunt makes everyone feel real great about it, but 8 times out of 10, that youth is coming from a hunting background and was likely going to be in hunting anyway. And the other 2 times out of 10, the kid had an awesome day and he went home and he was like, Mom, I want a waterfowl hunt. Or Dad, I want a waterfowl hunt. And they're like, okay, well, what do you need? And they're going to be like, I need decoys, I need waders, I need shells, I need a gun. And they're going to hand them a pair of football cleats and say, go play football. And so what we're finding is targeting novice hunters, which are those, upper teens, early 20s, mid 20s, and, couching it rather than a, hey, let's go out and hunt. It's an experience. Hey, would you like to harvest sustainable food that where it's coming from? Talking to folks that care about that type of experience rather than like, oh yeah, this is, you need to suffer. You need to be out in the snow. You need to have, that. Be like, no, this is, this is the ultimate non-processed operation in terms of food to table type of situation, and then spending a little bit more time with each individual rather than one day or a weekend and we're finding that tends to be, it's a lot more time invested, but the return on investment is so much higher than just a one-off with a bunch of kids.
It's good. That's great. It's really interesting too. I think so just random sidebar here. I'm very involved with Okayest Hunter and deer hunting and that sort of thing. And there's a number of folks that we interact with at our trade show we do and through social media and stuff. And I spend the majority of my time in those conversations talking about duck hunting because I'm very passionate. And what's interesting is over the last few years, some of these folks have started to like goose hunt or duck hunt, and they've been lifelong deer hunters. And they have said, waterfowl hunting is so much fun. They're like, it's such a different vibe. They're like, it's so expensive, but like, I'm not thinking about scent control. I can talk to my buddies. Right. Like you're doing the camaraderie of it. Like, it's just so it's like a breath of fresh air from folks who, like myself, you went out and you sat out in the woods by yourself for hours on end. Right. And it's like, oh, you got to be really careful at how you move, how much you move, noise you make. And I mean, you're in the duck blind and you're talking to your buddies. Maybe you're talking too loud, maybe whatever, you drop a shell on the boat, whatever it is. And it's like, oh, well, like, it's just different. And those folks have really enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We see that. And that's, how you kind of have to couch this experience, is that this is more of a person to person opportunity. This isn't suffering in the woods for 8 hours for the minute and a half adrenaline rush that you're going to get because a deer walked out. Like you have almost as much fun not shooting anything as you do because, your buddy got his foot stuck in his wader and he went down and all of a sudden he's wet. Or like you said, a gun jams, or of course, the moment you're pouring a cup of coffee, ducks come in like that. Those are the things that you think about that you're like, ultimately the day wasn't ruined. Like you said, you drop a shotgun shell in a aluminum boat. A deer ain't going to come by you for another 4 hours versus a duck. You're like, oh, well, hopefully another one comes.
It's like, yeah, I mean, and your dog's swimming back and you got ducks landing on top of them. I mean, it's just wild how it works. And the minute and a half adrenaline rush of deer hunting is incredible. Don't get me wrong, but when you're on a really good duck hunt and you have 90 minutes of constant action, birds in the air, birds working you, I mean, that's hard to beat too. That's super satisfying.
And again, you're not doing it alone most of the time.
Correct. Because if you want to, you can hunt alone on public land and really suffer. I seem to enjoy that and not shoot any ducks. I'm very good at that, setting myself up for that. And it's like, well, I could just go sit in a tree stand and do the same thing. Just wouldn't be wet, at least I wouldn't be wet. But anyway, I digress here. All right, we've been going for I think about an hour now. Matt, what do we miss?
Teal season.
Oh, Alaska. I know this is you. Go for it.
Yeah. I think federal limit sets it at a max of 15 days. And is it the state or the Flyway that determines how many days they're using? It must be the state, because I know Iowa last year just dropped down, or this past year just dropped down to 9 from the full 15 available. I think Wisconsin's been 9 the last several years, right?
Yep.
So how does that work from them setting it, the future of it based on teal numbers? Like how far in advance are we looking at that number to determine if we're going to still have the season or whatnot?
Yeah, so it's federal maximum is 16. So 16 days is the federal maximum we're allowed to. And the reason why Iowa went back down to 9 last year is, again, based on the spring survey. And when the blue-winged teal population falls below a certain threshold, it goes from a 16-day to a 9-day, and then I think to a 5-day. And so we fell below that certain threshold to hold a 9. So instead of a 16, it'd be a 9. But again, as you said, when we were allowed to have a 16-day teal season, Wisconsin was still sitting at 9. We actually started at 7. We did a 7-day season, and then we bumped it up to 9. And the reason why we do that is, again, based on public input. There is just a concern from a large contingent of the hunters that are convinced that hunting prior to the regular season opener is going to negatively affect the regular season. And so ultimately they're like, okay, if we have to have this teal season, we want to make it as early as possible and as short as possible to give us time between the youth hunt and between the regular opener. And again, arguments can be had either way. Quite frankly, I'm on the side of, I've looked at the harvest. Our regular season harvest is completely unchanged pre-early teal season and post-early teal season. So honestly, the early teal season has not affected the regular season in terms of hunting and harvest. I think at a local level, it could have an effect, I guess, if you had 10 groups going out on one body of water, then they were trying to stack it up for 9 days in a row. Well, maybe I wouldn't go there for your regular opener, but that doesn't mean those ducks aren't around to be shot. And so you just have to scout and do a little bit more work. But that's why we don't take the full 16, is because we have heard from the majority of the public and our conservation partners and organizations that are not yet ready to get to 16. And then the feds fix the problem for us, because right now we're at the maximum of 9. And so it worked out for us, because that's all right. Well, we're already at a 9-day. But again, ultimately, the teal populations will rebound. And then if we get back up to 16, we'll still have those discussions. We'll have to, do I think eventually someday we'll get there? Probably. But I don't know when that would occur. Because again, right now, it was just Wisconsin and Minnesota were the only 2 states that weren't taking the federal maximum for that. And again, Wisconsin has a long history of being considerably more conservative with our regulations than what is the maximum allowed by the feds, i.e. one hen mallard. We were at one hen mallard for a long time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Pretty much answers my question, I think.
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Anything else, Matt?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No.
All right. So Taylor, we're going to wrap this up with a round we call Sky Blast questions. This is simply rapid fire questions. We'll ask some off the cuff questions. Could be related to hunting, could be related to not hunting. We'll ask them. Your job is to just answer with the first thing that comes to mind, and then we'll wrap things up and hit the stop recording button.
Okay.
All right. Matt, you want to go first?
Sure. You mentioned a dog. What kind of dog do you have?
Black Lab.
There you go. You mentioned a boat. What kind of boat and motor do you run? Is it outboard, surface drive?
Yeah, I got a 16-foot Alumacraft with a 15-horse Merc outboard.
Okay. What's your shotgun of choice during waterfowl season?
Yeah, I shoot a Beretta. So, yeah, it was my dad's. And so, yeah, I grew up with a Browning BPS. And so once I was able to inherit that, I'm like, oh, what was I doing carrying that hunk of steel around?
Sure. Do you drive what brand of truck I assume you're towing your boat with?
No, I Toyota Tundra.
Okay. All right. And do you have a favorite taxidermy mount in your house of any kind?
Yeah, I have a White Wing Scoter that I shot out on the bay here a couple of years ago. Absolute stud
sweet.
Drake White Wing. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Right.
I shot it, and the guy who picked it up, he said, well, you can dump the rest of these shells in the lake. You don't even need to worry about the rest of the day. So, yeah.
Very cool. All right. That's my usual question. So
Awesome.
yeah.
I'm gonna steal one of yours, Matt. All right.
Yeah.
Last book you read.
Last book that I read, I would say it is Wheel of Time. So it's fantasy, science fiction.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. And any magazines you're subscribed to?
Oh my God. Now it's Ducks Unlimited, Delta, Pheasants Forever, NWTF, all of them.
All okay. All right. Favorite duck blind snack?
Oh, I'm a Little Debbie guy. So I'm Nutter Butters or Swiss cake rolls.
Okay. Excellent. Coffee or energy drinks?
Neither. Yeah, I know. Yeah, just water. I like apple cider out in the tree stand or in the blind. So
Apple cider, really?
Yeah, it's a game changer when you're out in terms of in the deer blind or up in the tree stand. It's something warm and you're not jittery, you're not worried too much about it. So
I don't tend to get jittery from coffee.
Yeah.
I drink
never drank it.
So you never drank coffee.
No, it's just murky water. It's not something that I like at all. So
murky water, that's great. What is tea then? What is tea to you then?
I don't unless it's iced tea or whatever. Sweet tea, that's fine, but regular tea is not. No.
Okay. All right. Pizza or tacos?
Pizza.
Okay, good answer. And then how many days a year do you get to duck hunt?
I'm generally in that 25 to 35, so I get out quite a bit.
Okay.
Nice.
All right. That's great. All right, mostly public land?
Mostly public land. Yep.
Okay. And then do you get the opportunity to take any hunting trips, out of state trips?
Yeah. Yep. I've been to North Dakota a couple of times, been down to Stuttgart twice. And then, I did the, out by New Jersey, I did Black Duck and Brant out that way too by Atlantic City. So yeah, I try to get out.
Awesome. Any trips planned for this year yet, or this season, I should say?
Nope, nothing this year. We have 160 acres of private land, and we got about 160, 170 bucks. So I'm going to be bouncing my time around duck hunting and deer hunting, and so I think I'll be sticking pretty close.
It's such a hard thing. And I'm not shooting 160-inch deer, that's for sure. That's a guarantee. So I'm dying here. I'm running out of voice. So let's okay. What is the one piece of advice for someone new into duck hunting that you'd give them?
I guess I would find a mentor. Find somebody that's going to make it enjoyable. That because again, how many times have you tried something new and it was awful, and you give it maybe once or twice, and you're like, I'm not doing that anymore. And all it does is take one person that may potentially have a boat or one person that has a spot that you can get in. And even if you don't shoot anything, you're like, okay, I can get behind this. This is good. Just you don't have to do it on your own. It's an interesting, the duck hunting community is very interesting in that nobody hates a duck hunter like another duck hunter unless you're asking for help on how to do it. And then they're like, oh, you're one of us. It's a brotherhood. And so again, if you talk to people, you make a couple of phone calls, you see somebody that, whether it's a bar or a restaurant, they're sitting wearing camo and you're like, oh, are you guys out? And, you start having that conversation and you're like, hey, sometimes if you had an extra spot, let me know. I'm going to say 7 times out of 10, they're like, okay, yeah, why not? But again, you have to catch them in the right situation. Don't ask them that question if you got in 15 minutes before shooting light and you're trying to go through their decoys and then all of a sudden they're irate and then it's a bad experience. But yeah, I would just say try to find somebody, try to find a mentor and stick with it.
It's great advice. And it's funny you talk about the duck hunting community too, and we'll wrap up on that. We'll wrap up with that question because the story will sort of spin this around here. But I saw a post, it was reference social media a bunch. I saw a post on Facebook the other day, and it was someone said, hey, I hunt here. I mostly hunt alone. I would like to start hunting with other people. Does anybody want to go out? Start going out. And it was one post, and it was in a group, a waterfowl hunting group. And within an hour, there were 15 comments. 15 different people like, heck yeah, man, I live within an hour. I'd love to hunt with you. And it's like, oh, okay. Like, people are offering up their spots on their boats. I mean, it's very, very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. And again, how many times have you seen a post where a guy's like, hey, I got these decoys that I want to give to a youth, that I just don't use anymore. And all of a sudden, boom, they're gone. And like, you just saved a kid, $200 or $300 on something like that. And so again, there are definitely some good apples out there. And I think the majority of them are. So
definitely. All right. So, Taylor, if folks have additional questions for you, if they want to know more information about giving public input, about on the commentary period, is they have follow-up questions based on anything that you said in this podcast, how can they get a hold of you? What should they do? Where should they reach out to?
Yeah. So again, I can't emphasize this enough, is that if you have questions, please contact me. Because again, like I said, how many times have you seen a comment on social media all of a sudden get legs and you're like, man, that's never going to happen because they didn't, they just don't understand the process or they didn't necessarily understand it. And so, yeah, reach out. Again, my email is taylor.finger@wisconsin.gov, or again, my phone, I have it on me all the time, 608-212-7923. And so I will answer your calls. I will spend the time because, like I said, if I take 10 minutes to help you answer that question, that potentially informs hundreds of people. And so rather than having, a question in the, if everyone comes up with questions, you're in the blind, you're sitting at a restaurant, you're sitting at a coffee shop, you're sitting at a bar, and you have those things come up, ask. Again, that's why we're here. We're a resource for you. And hopefully, throughout this podcast and stuff, I'm knowledgeable enough on it. I'm a waterfowl hunter. This is what I love to do. And so again, making sure that you have that information is my job. And, this is what I eat, sleep, and breathe. So.
Perfect. Excellent. I'm going to reach out with stuff that I see and I have questions on for sure. Definitely. And I think we would love to have you back on and talk just upland hunting in the state of Wisconsin too. Right.
Absolutely.
What that looks like, the stocking program, that's a whole separate podcast. So we'll figure out a time for that. Taylor, really appreciate you hopping on here. Loved all the information you provided, all the insights, the facts, the science, the statistics behind it. Really informational. I learned a ton. I hope our listeners did as well.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
yep, absolutely. Well, everybody who's listened, who's made it this far, thank you so much. We will catch you all next week with another episode. Later.